Hey everyone, Art Burns here, wishing you well today. I hope that you're doing well. I hope the day is treating you well, and I hope that you are treating you well today too. So, one of the many amazing benefits of mindfulness practices is, and especially as it relates to stress, as I'll illustrate to you in a few moments, is the ability to understand and to see very clearly in real time where we are placing our attention at any given time, right? There's a great saying that is favored by neuroscientists and by mindfulness practitioners alike. The saying is that where attention goes, energy flows. Okay, and that's what it's all about, right? As we're paying attention to certain things in our life, that's what we're giving energy to, right? And so I'll get back to that in a second, what that means. But a really important thing to understand about human behavior and human sort of the way that we operate, right, is that we all have within us what is called a negativity bias. Okay, now the negativity bias is something that is purely part of our wiring for survival, right? As for hundreds of thousands of years, human beings have evolved into what we are as, here in the middle of 2020, we've evolved to this point because we have spent more time, kind of paying attention to the things that the parts of our experiences that might hurt us, right? Which are the negative aspects of our experiences, right? Rather than the positive ones, right? And again, this is survival, right? And of course we want to survive, right? And we're lucky that we have been able to survive to this point. The thing is though, that if anything, this negativity bias has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger as we've gone on in a world in which we are safer and safer and safer, where we don't need it so much, right? But yet it's still very, very strong, right? So let me explain to you how so any negativity bias is just another implicit bias of our mind, right? And the reason why our brains and our minds create these implicit biases and hold on to implicit memories that are based on past trauma and past programming of the way that we were told that good behavior and bad behavior and all that kind of stuff. The reason why this all happens is because your brain wants to automate as much as it possibly can, right? The figure is really staggering. I think it's 2 million bits of data every second that you're alive, right? Or that you're awake. Your brain is processing 2 million bits of data every second, right? So all the things you hear, all the things you see, all the things you hear, you smell, you taste, you touch, all the things you think, your brain is processing this constantly, right? It's staggering how much processing that is, right? And so therefore your brain wants as much of that to be automatic as it possibly can. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to function, right? So one very simple example of this is the brain kind of forms what we call schemas, right? So a schema would be a very simple example of a schema would be a table or a chair, right? Anything with four legs. Like you look at something that has four legs and automatically, without thinking about it, without having to spend conscious energy on it, conscious attention on it, you know that thing with four legs sitting on the floor, that's either a table or a chair. And now you can within seconds determine, is it a stool or is it a table, and you can determine that through various recollection that you have of different shaped stools and chairs and tables and that, but the point is that without that schema, right, without that sort of implicit understanding of what that object is very likely to be, then every time we saw a table or chair, we would have to, what is that thing? And of course, then we would not be able to live, right? We wouldn't be able to go on with our lives. And of course, this is just one very simple example, right? We have schemas for everything, right? And that's the way our brains work, right? Another really common example of this, and this ties into the negativity bias, right? Because there's nothing negative or positive about a table or chair unless you need to rest something, put something down or rest your body. But let's say you're walking down, anyway, before I get into that, let me first say, when we're paying attention to things, right, the negativity bias of our mind, right, is saying that we are paying attention more to the negative things that are part of our experience than we are the positive things, right? Now again, This is perfectly normal, and it's the reason why we have evolved to be the human beings that we are in 2020 from hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years ago, right? When we dwelled in caves, because when we were cave dwellers, right, or even up till today, right, while you're walking along a path and you see a flower out of the corner of your eye, a flower doesn't resemble anything that's ever hurt you before or anything that you've ever been afraid of before, right? So therefore you're actually likely to not even notice the flower, right? But a stick that has a certain shape to it, right, a little squiggly shaped stick, well, that could be a snake. And from your, maybe from an experience, or maybe from your education, or maybe from, YouTube videos that you watch or whatever, that a snake could be venomous and a snake could very well hurt you. So therefore, when you see that squiggly stick out of the corner of your eye, you stop. You say, oh my gosh, is that a, okay, no, it's just a stick, right? But you're paying attention to it, right? And you're going to more likely register that than you're going to register the flower, because the flower is not likely to hurt you, right? And so that's the essence of how the negativity bias works, right? In fact, there's a fantastic, like, just this amazing psychologist named Barbara Friedrichsen, who I recommend so highly. As soon as this video is done, go look up Barbara Friedrichsen, Fredrickson. Okay, she's an amazing psychologist, and she talks about this a lot. Like her branch of psychology, I believe she calls it positivity psychology or something like that, positive emotion psychology, something like that. But anyway, she talks a lot about the negativity bias, and in fact, she and her colleagues have devised an actual ratio, right? The positivity ratio that she calls it, right? Which says and defines the fact that for every single negative experience that we have, right, for every stick that we see that might be a snake, we need to see 3 different flowers, and we need to have 3 different positive experiences in our lives to create a balance point, right? So only when we're at that point that we're having 3 to 1 are we feeling balanced, and are we feeling good about our lives, right? So now, that doesn't mean at all that we're having more negative experiences, right? It doesn't mean that we're passing by more sticks that look like snakes than we are flowers. What it means is that we're paying attention to those things that are negative, right? Like at a 3 to 1 ratio. That's what we're paying attention to, right? And so bringing this back to mindfulness, right, where attention goes, energy flows, right? And of course, as it relates to the stress response, right, if we're paying attention more to those things that are causing us fear, then we are going to more often enter into the stress response of our bodies, because the stress that we feel is always based on a sense of fear. It's based on a perceived endangerment to our well-being. So what that means is that when you're typically just kind of doing nothing, right, and your mind is just wandering off and you don't know where your attention is going because it's just wherever, right, you are more likely to think of the aspects of your life that are negative, right? The things that cause you fear, the snakes in your life. You're more likely to pay attention to those snakes than you are to pay attention to the flowers, right? By at least a 3 to 1 ratio. That's what you're more likely to wander into as your mind starts to wander, right? So again, now what mindfulness allows us to do as we practice mindfulness over and over and over, both formally and informally, right? For even as little as a few minutes a day, we train ourselves. We train the ability to first know where we are paying attention, right? Are we paying attention to those negative aspects of our lives, or are we paying attention to the positive aspects of our lives, right? We know this, right? And again, where attention goes, energy flows. So the more we're paying attention to those negative aspects, the more likely we are to feel uncomfortable, the more likely we are to enter the stress response, which is going to elevate our sympathetic nervous system with stress hormones and raise our heart rate and increase our blood pressure and make our respiratory system all, labored and quick, and all kinds of different systems in our bodies are going to be shut down. And and it can get really, really damaging to us, right? So with mindfulness practices, we start to see where it is that we're paying attention, right? And more importantly, we can then control where we are paying attention, right? We can control where our attention goes, because again, it's not that we're experiencing more negative things than positive things. It's that we are paying more attention to the negative things than the positive things. And therefore, that's a choice, right? You have the choice of what you want to pay, what you do pay attention to, right? And most of us want to pay attention to the positive things, right? Because most of us want to not be in the stress response. Most of us want to be healthy. Most of us want to be healthy and happy and healthy. Sorry. So that's the benefit of this training, right? Or again, one of the many benefits of this training is that we know where we're placing our attention. And once we know where we're placing our attention, we have the choice to shift where we pay attention, right? And not only that, but when we do experience negative aspects of our lives, right? When we do, which is part of life, right? Life is not supposed to be all flowers, right? Life is supposed to be a combination of flowers and snakes, right? And so when we experience the snakes in our lives, right? Mindfulness allows us to sort of be present with those snakes, right? And sort of, allow ourselves to kind of turn towards the negative aspects of our life so that we can see them for what they really are. Because normally what happens is the other thing that our mind is really good at is telling stories, right? And when we start to think about and we start to pay attention to something that's a negative aspect of our lives, we start to tell ourselves the stories that this is part of a flaw of ourselves, or that this is an unavoidable thing, or that this is overwhelming, or this is whatever, right? And these things are mostly not true. Right. So while mindfulness does involve, sort of allowing ourselves to be present with the good, with the negative things of our lives, and to allow our attention to dwell on these things a little bit, what's very, very helpful as well is to pay attention to the good things in our lives. And there's a really great way to do this. Okay, it's a very simple practice that you can do starting right now. To pay attention more to the positive things in your life, to create that equilibrium, that equanimity between your negative experiences and your positive experiences, and form a level of balance for yourself, and form a level of mental resilience and well-being through this balance. And this practice that I'm talking about is called a gratitude journal. Okay, as we express gratitude for things, right? So the simple way to do this practice is by just writing down every day 5 different things for which you are grateful. Now, they don't have to be like earth-shattering, wonderful things, right? It can be something like a delicious cup of coffee. It can be making a red light where you usually get caught at it. It could be, seeing a beautiful bird one day. It could be anything. It could be very little things, because that's, again, life is made up of lots of little things. And as we pay attention to those little things moment to moment, that's where the resilience and the positive outlook of life start to come through, right? So the first rule is don't try to make it, amazing things, because those are going to be hard to find, but you can always find the little things in your life for which you're grateful. And as you express gratitude for things, what you're doing is you're paying attention to the positive things in your life, right? You're just focusing your attention on those things which are positive, right? And so by listing 5 things every night, and I do recommend doing it close to bedtime, because it gives you a chance to look back on the day, and it also sets you up for a positive frame of mind as you go to sleep. And when we're sleeping, we're not unconscious while we're sleeping. Our brains and our minds are very, very active during the process of sleep. And so if you're active in a positive frame of mind, that's going to benefit you, just like it does during waking hours. So doing this right before you go to bed, it kind of sets you up for positive sleeping, sort of mental activity, right? So do it as close to bed as you can. Write down 5 things every night that you're grateful for that happened that day. Here's the thing. Don't repeat anything from day to day. right? Now that doesn't mean that you have to flip through your journal and see, like, did I ever mention this chocolate in my life, or did I ever mention this one thing? That's not what I mean. But just try to not repeat things from day to day, right? And the reason for this is that, in the first, few days, right, everybody's going to come up with the sort of, the big stuff, right? I'm grateful for my home, I'm grateful for my security, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for, and these things are all, of course, very valid, and there's no reason not to list those in your gratitude journal. But after those are done, now we got to start looking, right? And now we got to start looking for things throughout our day, right? And when you're holding yourself accountable for, tonight I'm going to have to spend 5 minutes writing things down, that 5 minutes can become 20 minutes if it's hard to remember things, right? So now throughout the day, I am going to start looking for things to be grateful for. Okay. And that is where the magic is, because now you're paying attention to the positive things in your life. And where attention goes, energy flows. And now you have a positive outlook on your life. You're feeling more resilient to the negative things because you realize how much of a balance there really is, right? Which is the counterintuitive thing. Your mind is counterintuitive to that reality, right? I love the gratitude journal. I do it no matter what's going on in my life. I spend 5 minutes every night listing five simple things down in my gratitude journal. I mean, I keep it right here on my desk. It's just a little book that I keep every night. Okay, every single night. I just listing 5 different things. Okay, it's just very simple, right? It changes everything. It really does. It's really a wonderful practice. So I encourage you to try it. And if you want any information or any advice on how to do this, or you have any questions, please don't hesitate to hit me up with a comment or an email or a reply or whatever, and let's get into a conversation with it. All right. Thank you for listening. I wish you well. I'll be back again tomorrow with some more thoughts of positive aspects of our lives. And this is probably going to edge into the compassion area of our lives, which is something else that we always have the choice to have the intention of compassion. And where attention goes, energy flows. And when we pay attention to the intention of compassion, we keep ourselves in that positive sort of mindset and that positive end of the spectrum of our emotions, and this just creates more well-being, more success, more thrive, more love, more everything beautiful. So join me again tomorrow. Thank you for listening. I wish you well. Take care.